Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to Circling Seattle Sports on Converge Media. Charles Hammaker here, as joined by always Bel Garcia.
Yeah.
I want to take the time to begin the episode by honoring a titan in the Seattle sports, not only Seattle sports, but the sports media industry as a whole. John Clayton passed over the past week. Was an American sports journalist, heavily related NFL football. Was with ESPN, a senior writer for ESPN. Previously worked with the Pittsburgh Press and the News Tribune down in Tacoma, Washington. I never actually met Clayton, but growing up in the area, obviously following the Seahawks, John Clayton was always a name that was around. And reading all of the tributes, whether it was the tweets or the stories about John Clayton, it always seems like he was that guy, no matter how new you were to the press box or writing about the team, no matter what, whether it was joining, I think it was KJR, John Clayton was going to make sure that you felt welcomed and that he was going to help you to the best of his ability. So a titan in our industry, I feel like we would be doing him an injustice if we didn't even mention his name, as we are circling Seattle sports, right? So obviously thoughts go out to his family and his friends. But John Clayton will always be one of those media members, just like whether it was like a Dave Niehaus with the Mariners, right? Media members in Seattle sports history that will always be remembered and, made the sports that they covered and the industry of sports journalism better. So rest in peace, John Clayton. So with that being said, I think it's fitting that we're jumping right into the Seahawks, who were active again this week, not necessarily on the same par as what we had last week, but I guess that's kind of a good thing.
Yeah,
compared to what
I don't know
happened
that they could have stunted us any more than they did last week. So
we'll just jump into it, Belle. What do we got?
Yeah, so just a couple things that relate to last week as well. Russell Wilson and the Seahawks both denied responsibility for the trade. Russell claims that the decision was mutual, and the Seattle front office states that he clearly did. So thoughts on that?
I'm interested to hear what you think about this too, because obviously both sides are going to say their own things, and I think even Russell in the Denver press conference was like, "Oh, maybe I'll write about it in my book," and he was like kind of cheeky about it. I don't know if we'll ever really understand or hear the real story about it because both sides can push their narrative, right? But I know that Russell's agent, Mark Rogers, was the one who put the list of, if you remember, I think it was a year ago, put the list of teams out before that he would want to be traded to.
Yes.
I think it was Dallas, Denver, New Orleans, and Chicago. He was the one who put that out, and it sounded like from reading, about the situation and the fallout was that Mark Rogers was a real pain in the, don't swear on this show, behind for John Schneider in the Seahawks front office. So it just sounds like he didn't want his client in Seattle. I can understand not wanting to be in a scheme that's not going to best suit your abilities, right? We're gonna run the ball after every draft since Russell that the first speculation came out that he wanted to leave. After every draft, Pete Carroll, we want to run the ball. We're gonna run the ball. I can understand that, but the who pushed first domino, I think it was Russell's camp. Was it Russell Wilson directly? I don't think so necessarily, but I think it was his camp that said we got to get him out of here, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so I am interested to see one day if we hear about it, if it's in his book or if it's one of those things down the line where we hear about it, right?
Clearly happy about the trade with the color coordination with his family on the outfits for the Denver Broncos there. But I would have to agree with you. If it wasn't Russell directly, it definitely felt like it was coming from, like you said, his camp. And with the rumors that he wasn't happy last offseason, it just kind of feels like that was always there in the background. And yeah, I mean, the agents are going to do what's best for the player, but you have to assume that the players have a hand in what's being done. So,
because if he wanted to stay, I feel like he'd be here.
Yeah.
Right. So no, I mean, at the end of the day, this is past news now. We have a new situation to look at of franchises all over the league. Where's our franchise quarterback? Figuring that out once again. So speaking of quarterback,
transitioning into our quarterback role here. Colin Kaepernick has been trying to make his way back into the league, and Pete Carroll, it seems like, kind of shut that down. Kaepernick asked for a tryout, and it wasn't granted. The coach isn't sure if Seattle's the right fit, and it kind of sounds like he's not sure if football's the right fit. So
yeah, well, we were looking at that, right? Yeah. That was like the direct quote. Oh, he should get a second chance. I don't know if it's with us. I don't know if it's in football. It's a really weird quote. But my stance on that situation is, why not at least give him a tryout?
Yeah.
See what he's got, right?
I agree.
Worst thing can happen. We're not interested, right? At least give him the opportunity to prove himself. And if he wows you, hey, look, there you go. You gave him the chance, right? And especially with what was said today with Shane Waldron, they had a press conference today. He said the quarterback position isn't being given to anyone right now, no matter the fact that Drew Lock is on the roster or not.
Yeah.
So you talk about compete all the time, right? Pete Carroll always, compete this, compete that, compete. Let him compete. Just give him a tryout.
Yeah.
Let him see. So I'm not saying, hey, he needs to be signed now, right? I'm saying just give him a shot, see how it goes.
Yeah, he's fighting to try to find a role again. So why not at least give him the tryout? Do you think that we, obviously the options at quarterback are getting kind of slim. Do you think that we stick with Drew Lock? Are you still on Team Malik?
Yeah, it's an interesting situation because prior to us recording this episode and earlier in the day that this was released, Matt Ryan was traded to the Indianapolis Colts. Marcus Mariota signed with the Falcons. So I would still go with the draft route. But I know that there have been murmurings of Baker Mayfield being traded to Seattle for a day 2 pick. Now, where I stand on that situation is, if you're going to give him a late round pick, sure. Okay. Because if we're just going to accept what Pete Carroll wants to get back to is running the football and being able to pass when needed to, Baker Mayfield could fit that role, right? I mean, he had a great running back and two great running backs with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt out in Cleveland. So, hey, if you want to fit that mold, sure. I can't tell you that he's a franchise guy. I really don't think he is. I mean, that playoff run they had, 2 years ago now, that was cool to see. But he hasn't been a guy that consistently, puts up these good numbers where I can say, okay, let's give him a shot, right? Cleveland's got a better, a more talented quarterback, a lesser human being now on the roster. But I would just want to avoid that situation, and I'm going to stick with my Malik Willis pick.
Yeah.
Do I know that happens? This team is full of surprises, obviously, as we've seen in years past, let alone in the last month, right? So I would avoid the quarterback situation. I mean, I would avoid trading for Baker Mayfield. Do you have an input on quarterback? Where do you stand on quarterback?
I don't think that Mayfield is the answer. And like I said, everything's getting so slim. So I think that if I'm in that rebuilding mindset, I definitely would try to get something in the draft too. Yeah, for sure.
Well, and I think that's important what you said with Mayfield, right? I don't want to press the issue of quarterback, right? I don't want to fall into a bad trade because I want to figure it out. I don't, with the way it is right now, I don't think you have a definite Super Bowl window. You have time to mess with some things. Mess with it. I don't want to press the issue. Oh, we need a guy right now. And I think any guy you would have been able to get to help you right now is gone. So that's how I said. Yeah. I think that was key.
We have also been busy in signing others. So the Seahawks have signed Uchenna Nwosu on a 2-year, $20 million deal. He is a 4-year veteran, had 15 career sacks, 1 interception, and 8 pass deflections, as well as signing center Austin Blythe on a 1-year, $4 million deal. Spent last season with Kansas City, didn't play because the Chiefs drafted a center who won the job. So doesn't sound very good. What do you think? You think he breaks out here?
For Blythe, he had, when he was with the Rams, I know that a lot of the Rams following was upset that he wasn't with the team anymore to go to Kansas City. And I know that the center that, I think it was Creed Humphrey, was a center that the Chiefs drafted. He was somebody in the draft that I would have liked Seattle to pick last year.
Yeah.
But I know he won that starting job. And do I I think that Blythe is an upgrade over who we had the last few years, and Ethan Posich and Kyle Fuller. Kyle Fuller did re-sign with the team though,
Yes.
Which I hope is just a depth thing. So I think it's an upgrade. Do I think it's like a Pro Bowl guy? No, I think he's just my goal. All I need from him, ceiling wise, just be a solid starter.
Mhm.
I don't need you to go out there and lock down Aaron Donald every time we play the Rams, right? And just keep him right there.
Yeah.
Just be a solid starter, be a guy that I can count on instead of what we've had in the last few years at the center position.
For sure. And our last signing here is corner Artie Burns on a 1 year, $2 million, 5-year veteran, spent last season with Chicago after 4 seasons with Pittsburgh. He had 4 career interceptions, 33 pass deflections, and is familiar with Sean Desai. So familiar head coach or coordinator there. Yeah.
I'm intrigued. I want to ask you this though, because when we were talking about it, when we got here today, you looked at the 5-year veteran thing, the 4 career interceptions. I think you were like, that's not good. Why is that? You want more numbers from him, or what's your stance on Burns?
I felt like there were other guys on the free agency list that might have had more of an impact, such as Kevin King, who I think we mentioned last season.
Yep.
So while this signing is okay, I don't know that he replaces a DJ Reed.
Yeah, really, those are big shoes to fill. And I'm hoping though that the case is that this is like a slot corner type of guy, because you still got Sidney Jones, right? And he might be one of the outside guys. Hoping that Burns is a slot guy, and that you can bring in. I know Stephon Gilmore's still on the market. AJ Bouye got released by the Panthers, I believe it was. Kevin King is still on the market. That's where I would want to go with that. But I think his familiarity with Desai is a big key, because Desai is somebody who has been talked about as a potential head coach.
Yeah.
And so I think knowing him really helps. It's like, hey, this is a guy I can vouch for. But yeah, I'm hoping that this isn't one of to replace like a DJ Reed, like one of the starting outside corner. Yeah, I agree with you on that.
And we've also released a few players over the week. The team released Benson Mayowa. It was his second stint with Seattle. He had 6 sacks, 28 games played, 3 tackles for loss in the 2020-21 seasons, as well as cutting Carlos Dunlap and Kerry Hyder Jr. Dunlap's stats with Seattle in 25 games, Dunlap recorded 13.5 sacks, 18 tackles for loss, 2 pass deflections. Hyder Jr. stats with Seattle, 15 games, recovered 2 fumbles, 1.5 sacks, 3 tackles for loss. Carlos Dunlap's release was a surprise for me. I'm not sure how you felt about that one.
See, that's the thing, because you sign Nwosu, which from what I understand, you're going to a 3-4, right? So you need 3 guys, 3 D linemen down, obviously on the D line. And you've got linebackers that are going to rush the quarterback. So you got Nwosu on one side. Who are your DNs? I mean, I saw a mock depth chart where Poona Ford was a DN. Now, I love Poona Ford. You know I love Poona Ford. But cutting Carlos Dunlap was not something that I think should have been done. I think now you're looking at it, hey, when we're in week 8 of the season, right, are we going to be looking at, hey, maybe we shouldn't have cut Carlos Dunlap? I would like to have that depth, because if I'm in the head coaching position or the general man, I know that we're going to get players injured. It's just what's going to happen. Never, I think, have you gone through a season and said, hey, we went throughout and we didn't suffer any major injuries to anybody. That's not going to happen. So I'm hoping we don't get to that point in the season where it's like, oh, we're hurting for guys. Because obviously the way that the Super Bowl played out and the way that team came together was miraculous. And, that doesn't happen often. But when we won the Super Bowl in 2013, you had great depth at defensive end. Michael Bennett, Cliff Averill, Chris Clemens, Bruce Irvin, Red Bryant. You had a lot of depth on that defensive line. A lot of them weren't making a solid amount of money, because they were on prove it deals. But yeah, Dunlap, I don't know what you're doing there. I don't understand that move as well. Hyder I can get, Mayowa I can get, Dunlap.
Don't get it. And we've also signed Quinton Jefferson. Jefferson's second stint with Seattle. He spent his first 4 seasons with the Seahawks. His career totals are 15 sacks, 3 fumble recoveries, 7 pass deflections, 3 forced fumbles, and 18 tackles for loss. So it sounds like a good homecoming there.
Yeah, I liked Jefferson when we had him the first time around. I thought it sucked when he went over to the Raiders, and I think this is not only because of liking him already before, but also in his press conference today, he mentioned Clint Hurt. Said Clint Hurt was a guy that really helped him grow as a football player, and he loves Seattle. He has a house here still. I guess he still came back to visit.
That's awesome.
So it's a good homecoming for him, and that's kind of what you want, right? With how things went with Bobby Wagner, and some of the other guys that have left the organization, you hope that guys want to be here, right? So that's good to see, and it just sounds like it was I know it was a 2-year, $9.5 million deal.
Okay.
So 2 years is fine, right? So that helps you with depth again. So I thought that was good. He's not a guy that's going to record the most sacks as a defensive tackle, but he always seemed to be involved in plays when he was in Seattle. So I took note of that, and I think that's a good piece. Speaking of good pieces,
and like you said, prove it deals. Rashaad Penny was resigned to a 1-year, $5.75 million with incentives to get to $6.5 million. I was a fan of him at the end of the season. I know that we previously talked about it, and it sounds like, are you in touch with the Seahawks here? Because you kind of mentioned a prove it deal, and look what we got.
I can't spoil my secrets now. I think this was a good deal. I know that there was concerns I saw on Seahawks Twitter about the money, and I get that. But also, the running back market is really depleted in free agency right now. I know a bunch of guys like James Conner would have been a good guy for on the free agent market, but he re-signed with the Cardinals, I believe. And from what I understood, generally was that the free agency market was desperate for running backs, and Rashaad could have leveraged his play at the end of the season, I'm sure, into a deal with another team if he had wanted to do that. But from what I had read from the press conference today, that Seattle is home for him.
Good.
And he really wanted to be here. He used the word thankful and grateful a lot. So no, I think 1 year, hey, that end of the season sample, great. Do it over a full season, even better. You'll get more money. And what's interesting is, we talked about Penny a lot. Since the end of the season, really, right? From what I understand is him and Chris Carson have been talking about being the greatest 1-2 punch in the NFL. Obviously, that factors on health and availability, right? But it was something that I think some people were questioning, right? Is Chris Carson going to come back because of that neck injury?
Yeah.
And anything, not even in sports, just a neck injury in general is scary, right? So it sounds like we'll have Chris back for another year. And that should be really helpful. If you want to, you and I talked about this before we went on air today, the way that Pete Carroll talked about the formula in 2013 for winning a Super Bowl. And some people have even mentioned that. We got a comment on one of the Seahawks videos we've done about getting back to that. My issue with that is you had Marshawn Lynch back then, and you cannot. It's very, 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 very hard to replicate a Marshawn Lynch, not only as a player but as a person, right? Having those two guys healthy and performing at their best, though, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So I would, and then goes back to what we were talking about health, right? If you have one of those guys, I mean, because I know in years we've been in situations where we didn't have either of those guys, right? Alex Collins was taking the lead back role. So I think one, it's a good deal. And two, if we can get those guys to, be available for at least 14 games, right? Majority. I think we should have some success. Obviously it depends on the guy who's taking snaps, but I think it's solid for the moment.
Yeah, for sure. If they can try to do what Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon did last year with that 1-2 punch, then it would look really well. So we hope that Chris Carson comes back healthy and there are no issues with that neck injury. And speaking on other teams here, we're going to dive into our league news. As you mentioned, Watson was traded to the Browns on a 5-year, $230 million contract. The Texans received 3 first-round picks, a third-round pick, and potentially a 5th. Now, that being said, he still faces personal things. He still has those 22 civil lawsuits hanging over his head. Cleveland states that they did their homework before signing the guy. The lawyer that represents the 22 women said otherwise. So I think I'm going to retract what I said last week, just because I think that you do have to take his personality into account. And it's hard to, again, with those 22 civil lawsuits and the Browns basically saying, here's this guaranteed amount of money, and we don't care if you're found guilty of these 22 civil lawsuits. We're going to guarantee you a bag. Like, I didn't care for that. I did not like that.
Yeah. So the main thing in it was, to me, was seeing that the lawyer, that's representing these women said, hey, despite what the Browns organization said, I never got a phone call, right? I never got reached out to. So no, I mean, that's kind of how I've stood with the situation since we found out about it. After one person, hey, maybe, I know that people try to ruin athletes' careers.
Yeah.
You start stacking up. It's like, something's wrong here, or this is a really elaborate scheme. And I don't think it's the latter. I think it's the prior. So yeah, it's really interesting. I know that Cleveland traded Case Keenum and they signed Jacoby Brissett, so they're already preparing for Watson to be out for a certain amount of games. Okay. It's just a situation that, if I was the organization of Seattle, I would just have never have touched. I would have never have touched, and I'm glad he didn't end up in Seattle.
Right? Yeah. I don't know that I ever saw reports they were actually looking into it. So did you?
There were bumbles, but I guess he turned us down anyway. So.
Oh, okay. Well, better for us.
Yeah.
In other league news, and this one made me very sad, the Raiders traded for Davante Adams, who is now getting a 5-year, $141 million deal. Apparently, Davante's always wanted to play with Las Vegas, being from Fresno, and
then
he
Oakland.
reunites with then Oakland, and he reunites with Derek Carr. So again, not happy about it, but
if you have noticed Bel's stickers over her tenure here with us on CSS on Converge, as Salman pans to the wide, Bel was not happy with it. It's interesting, not only to get him out of the NFC, but also the fact that Aaron Rodgers apparently knew about Davante's desire to not stay in Green Bay and still signed the deal. I don't know if you've seen anything about it, why he decided to ask for a trade, whether it was just wanting to play with Oakland, with Vegas, whatever, with the Raiders, or wanting to play with Derek Carr. But I'm really intrigued by that. I don't, until I see anything that actually confirms it, or he says in a press conference he's got his Raiders jersey and he's like, oh, I wanted to come and play with my homie Derek Carr.
Yeah.
Until I see anything like that, we're friends, this and that, or I wanted to wear the black and silver, I'm kind of stumped by it. I was surprised. First thing I get from Bel is no.
Yeah.
Man,
it was so hard. He sent a thank you to the fans. Of course, I, as well as other cheeseheads, were very shocked to hear that the Packers offered him more than 141. They were willing to match and exceed the offer, and he still wanted to leave. So I don't understand how you can go from Aaron Rodgers to Derek Carr. Sorry, biased opinion maybe, but
I mean, better for Seahawks. So
yeah, I guess so. We'll see what the Packers do.
even though we do play the Raiders this year
and the Packers, Seattle does travel to Green Bay.
I don't want to think about it. How come we have to travel to Green Bay again?
I know. So it's been a travel to Green Bay, I think, for like the last few years.
And Seattle hasn't won in Green Bay since like '99.
Well, let's keep it that way.
Bel Garcia will no longer be no. All right. Anyway, keep it moving.
We're gonna go ahead and move on here. Stafford received an extension from the Rams. Not surprising at all. They were working on it. 4-year, $160 million deal with $135 million guaranteed. Of course, they want to run it back, and they called themselves a super team. So I didn't imagine this going any other way.
Yeah, that, and they gave him a toy and Allen Robinson.
Right. So, exactly.
Rams obviously want to. There was the whole thing about them. Putting all their chips in for this year. I think they're loading up again for next year. I know that Von Miller's gone. We signed with the Bills. Mm-hmm. But as long as they've got Aaron Donald and Sean McVay, I think they're going to be a competitive team. And I think they're contender candidates again. I'm not saying they're favorites. I'm saying they're contender candidates. So yeah, hey, I mean, you got Stafford, and obviously Stafford's he's a good quarterback. I'm not going to say he's a great quarterback. And he's obviously going to help you win games. So it makes total sense. Like you're saying, it makes sense.
You put the right pieces around him, and he proved that he can get some success.
And just get him out of Detroit.
Exactly.
Get him away from the Lions.
And as you previously mentioned, Matt Ryan was also traded. He was traded to the Colts today.
3rd round pick.
Yeah. Was that it?
Yep.
That was it.
Yep.
What is up with these trades this year, guys?
It's a wild offseason.
And Trent Brown decided to stay in New England after a successful visit with the Seahawks over the weekend where there was mutual interest. He decided to stay in New England on a 2-year deal. So not much to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, you now have to shift your focus to the other tackles on the market. I know that Dwayne Brown has been receiving interest from the Panthers. Where he goes is still up to him, and I haven't seen anything else outside. I haven't seen anything about him wanting to stay in Seattle or Seattle working on a deal with him. So hey, see if you can get Teron Armstead, right? You still got a tackle problem. I know Brandon Shell's still a free agent, and Russell Wilson's been recruiting him to Denver. So you've got some things to figure out. So Trent Brown's on the market. You got to move to the next step. You got to move on. Got to deal with it.
Your recruiting comment. I had read that Russell might have been recruiting Bobby. Do you believe that?
I don't want to talk about it.
Okay.
Do I believe it? Yeah, I believe it because I'm sure Russell has always been the guy that wants to win, right?
Yeah.
He named his son Win. Okay, so there's name your children what you want, but yeah. And I mean, any team, I think any of the other 31 teams in the league outside of Seattle would want to sign up Bobby Wagner. I don't see why not, right? So I get it. I totally get it.
I'm surprised to have not already gotten a notification of his signing. So
sad face.
Yeah.
That one hurt more for me. Anyway.